Let's see, report on this. All right, and welcome. This is the first installment of Father and Son. This is my son, Jacob Frost. Hello, Jacob.
Hello.
And
Hi.
I'm Dr. Samuel Frost, the father figure. And it was Jacob's idea to start a podcast, and we wanted to do it on the Psalms because the Psalms, in virtually every commentary I read, they all say the same thing when it comes to the Psalms, and that the Psalms is the entire range of human emotions. It's the whole package. It's the ups, the downs, the sideways, and the all around, and the north, south, east, and west of human life and human tragedy. And the Psalms express this in music to God, and it's very human. Would you say that would be correct, Jacob, in your?
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. As you were saying that, I was trying to think of who said what, and someone compared the Psalms to a miniature Bible. That
Oh, yeah.
basically you've got the entire Bible just written all in that psalm. I was trying to remember who said it, but that's what
There's
I need.
probably been many who have said it, because
Mhm.
I've heard that, and that certainly is another aspect. Because we find the Psalms quoted in every aspect of the uh, what we would call the New Testament. I
Yeah,
prefer to call it the Greek writings or the first century works of the apostles and the
and
gospel.
it's even something like this where um, I was reading most often quoted scriptures that the Desert Fathers, that's just one group, was the Psalms. They would sing that regularly, and they would quote them regularly. They knew their Psalms. They memorized those Psalms.
Set
I
them
guess
to
there's
music.
really nothing to do in the desert but to memorize those Psalms.
Now
And
you go to the North American Reformed Presbyterian Church of America. What denomination?
RPCNA, Reformed Presbyterian Church of North America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Exclusive Psalms.
exclusive psalmody, and it's also a cappella.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm still I said I was going to read this book. There's a man um, that kind of wrote out the entire reasoning behind that position. I told people that I was going to read it. I've not read it. So
It's
maybe
an old
now
debate.
I'm being recorded. now now I'll go ahead and
You
say
have to
that
read it now.
I'll have to read it now.
Well, if you're going to read that on the regulative principle, you'll have to read
But
John Crane.
I will say this. I
John
will say
Crane too. He's got a book. It's a big
I
debate.
will I will say this, that since joining that church, the RPCNA church, the Psalms have been really important. And I don't think, I mean, I think the Psalms should be sung regularly.
Yeah.
That tradition in the Reformed world, that tradition goes all the way back to John Calvin.
Oh, sure. Goes
John
back
Calvin
to
brings it
the
back in a sense. Um,
goes
it was
back to the
sung
late
in the
first
early
century,
church.
early second century. They were
It's,
singing psalms.
Jesus sings them.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Everybody, and it is God's word. And if you're like, and I've been to other, Christian meetings. I'm at the Indiana University, so I would go to other sorts of fellowships and singing hymns that are not the Psalms. I almost feel like my heart isn't as in it as it is in with the Psalms. I think it's improved my. I can't speak enough just how wonderful it is to sing the Psalms in God's house. That's just such a blessing. And it really has made me focus in on the Old Testament as something that
Oh, yeah.
is, we say that they're equal, but, you know, at least in my view, I kind of haven't been focusing in on it, but finding Jesus in the Psalms, finding the gospel in the Psalms, um, that's something that's been really opened up to me in that church specifically. So I can't, yeah, the RPCNA, I love the RPCNA church. I
Forget
really
the
do.
name of the author. It's called the Messiah in the Psalms. Uh,
Right.
and I have it. I'm not gonna go get it, but it's like about right there somewhere.
That's interesting because I didn't know we had it.
Yeah. We have that. But in my Psalter, this is the PCUSA Psalter. And in that, on beginning with the hymn 158, they go
Mhm.
through this section goes through all 150 Psalms. So Presbyterians, even the modern Presbyterian hymnal, now there's the newer Presbyterian hymnal too that has the Psalms. That has always been a part of our tradition. And of course, your denomination stayed on that and did not allow any other, whereas the others, OPC and PCA, and they brought in.
Well, I mean, they do. So I was in a, oh,
And
gosh,
we're not
this
going
is,
to settle that debate. That's not what this is about.
I was, it's like
Thank goodness.
UPCA, USA. I don't know. It's United Reform, the URC. I think it's the URC. I can't remember. I'm butchering it.
There's a
But
lot of Presbyterians.
I was going to like a conservative Presbyterian Reform denomination, and they were using the Psalms. So I realized that it wasn't just like the PCUSA. There were other people that were using the Psalms in their worship, and I think that should be spread across the evangelical.
You'll find it among Wesleyans, Methodists, Lutherans, certainly.
But there's a large population, at least in the United States, that don't sing them,
Yeah.
and it's almost as if they don't know that they can sing them. But like
Oh,
me, I didn't know I could. I didn't. I thought I had to be like, well, why aren't we singing the Psalms in the first place? And then I go to this church and I'm like, oh, because we've already been doing the Psalms, and there are churches that are doing that, and I'm just the guy that's catching up, I suppose.
well, in this series, and we're going to do all 150, so we'll have 150 shows. And we don't want to run any longer than an hour. And of
It's a
course,
lot of shows.
it's God's word and it says a bunch, but we want to do an introduction. So when anyone asks, what are you doing? We can always say, go back to one. This is the heading. So go back to episode 1. So in this, we've noted that the Psalms have always played a part, always, for 2,000 years. And this comes out of the synagogue church, Jewish Gentile merging there, of singing psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. Most likely that's what Paul as a Jew had in mind when he said sing psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. He's thinking, Greek terms that we find in the Septuagint, which is the Hebrew translation of the Hebrew text into Greek. And so we find Jesus at the end of the meal there before his crucifixion. He's singing the Psalms and references them quite often. The Psalms are all throughout the letters of Paul and in the Gospels and this, that, and the other. They're messianic, they're prophetic, they're doing all kinds of things. And you could spend and some scholars have made that their specialty to just focus in on the Psalms. But anyway, with that being said, and the influence that they still have, we also want to note that we are familiar with for example, both Jacob and Nine Jacobs. These are some of Jacob's books in our library here, a few thousand volumes at this point. We read quite a bit, and for example, translation studies. This is a wonderful little introduction book by Susan Bassnett. So we're familiar with that. Of course, anything today with language, linguistics, language theory, philosophy of language, you're going to deal with this guy. And I don't know if Jacob, if you want to say anything about this Marxist, or if he,
Oh, I don't
or if he
know.
is a Marxist. But anyway, this is where these two right here. These are your big boys. And
Actually, the
recommended
big
reading.
guy in linguistics, the big guy in linguistics is Chomsky, not
Well,
Derrida. At least that's what I've heard.
we actually have that one
Oh
right
yeah.
here. Aspects of the theory of syntax, but no, Chomsky, this is a very necessary reading. This is seminary. I was introduced to this one in seminary. So this one, now I used to think Chomsky, he's a liberal. Yeah, he's you can't. That doesn't mean that everything he says is has is half baked. Um, so don't guy was doing a lot of work that is picked up by, if you read Stanley Grenz or any of these guys, Christians that are in linguistic theory, Christian view of linguistic theory. We have some of those books, but they're reading this stuff, and this is filtering in now very much so into interpretation of our
Oh, well, I mean,
biblical
Chomsky,
text. There's no doubt about it.
like with Chomsky, I mean, in the
Definitely with
sixth
Chomsky.
cognitive psychology and all that, I
Okay.
mean, that's, yeah, totally. That's, yeah,
This is
Chomsky's a big deal.
another good little book, Question of Textuality. This is the series of essays, Strategies of Reading in Contemporary American Criticism. Good stuff. And Deconstructive Criticism, of course, by Leitch, which is a pretty standard. These days, he's getting into what it is and what it isn't. There's a lot of confusion about what deconstruction is. And Jacob, you're there at Indiana University, so you hear this stuff. This is the guy. If you go back to Gordon Clark and Cornelius Van Til days, be this guy. This is the one that they were reading here, Language and Reality by Mr. Urban. And again, this was 1939.
Well, Clark, in his book on language, specifically dedicates a
Yeah,
chapter.
he
Yeah.
takes on a good chunk of what Urban is doing. And just to give you language is the last and deepest problem of the philosophy or the philosophic mind. So think post Hegel, post Kant, coming into the 20th century. Language is the last and deepest problem of the philosophic mind. This is true whether we approach reality through life or through intellect and science. All life, as Henry James. Here's the thing about the James brothers. I can't read anything today modern without William James and Henry James being referenced. It's quite something. So I'm entering in now to a new job that's dealing with cognitive behavioral therapy and all the rest of it. And guess who's quoted quite a bit is William James. Anyway, anyway, so here's Henry James said, comes back to the question of our speech, the medium through which we communicate. So I think it was reflected, and Jacob, you can help me out here whether or not, whether we have truth. That was the old debate, whether truth or not truth. Okay, so do we have the apparatus to ascertain truth? Here's Kant. Can we know truth back behind the veil or the wall or whatever? Okay, even if we had truth, would we be able to convey truth through the written text? So that's the means. And since words are, here's another book, and then I'll let you answer. This is a great little book by Hayakawa, Language in Thought and Action. And he's got a chapter here, one word, one meaning fallacy. Everyone, of course, who has ever given any thought to the meanings of words has noticed that they are always shifting and changing in meaning. Usually people regard this as a misfortune because it leads to sloppy thinking and mental confusion. What did you mean by that? Oh, I must have misunderstood you. I thought you meant to remedy this condition. They are likely to suggest that we should all agree on one meaning for each word and use it only with that meaning. Thereupon, it will occur to them that we simply cannot make people agree in this way, even if we could set up an ironclad dictatorship under a committee of lexicographers who would place censors in every newspaper office and microphones in every home. This is 1930s too, so you start hearing the postmodern stuff. The situation, therefore, appears hopeless. There's your cynicism, your skepticism, translation. Do we know what the text means? Can I know what the writer of Psalm 1, 2,600 years ago, am I lost in the translation there? That's the, because anyway,
I think
you can see where that leads to skepticism.
I think that I think I would actually agree with that cynicism of language.
You got to do something with it.
If God's word is not inerrant and not infallible, therefore not very reliable,
Oh yeah.
and certainly something that shouldn't be normative in my life. And
Yeah.
but if you reflect the problem of language from man's perspective, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get uncertainty. You're going to get a multiplicity of interpretations, and a lot of these, philosophical answers, they try um, to language which lead. I mean, I guess why those philosophers they're stating that language is so important is because that's the means by which we can create ethical norms and live under um, some semblance of meanings and narratives whereby a community can come together and kind of live in a righteous way. And
Yeah.
and but if language is that difficult to convey, and then how is it that we create a community in which I guess all those philosophies, they don't just end up in texts. They don't stop at texts. They grow into communities, and they grow into laws, and they grow into these normative structures that people dedicate their lives to. And um, that's how you read the books without being too bookish in a sense. And that's what the Bible is speaking about. A Bible is not just a book that its boundaries are only the pages of the book. It's not just it's setting up, it's communicating a truth, and it's setting up a community, and it's giving you um it's giving you the means of salvation and what that looks like. And that's so important. And that's something that philosophy, or philosophers like Derrida and other French Marxists like Alain Badiou and others, or Sartre, that's their goal. And that's why it's important to read these thinkers, because as we'll get into Psalm 1, the Bible is very clear about how the world is divvied up. It's divvied up in a way that you have the righteous and you have the wicked.
Yeah, and
And
you're
as
already
much
anticipating.
yeah, and as
Yeah.
much as, like, I think it is important to read these secular thinkers because they're influential. They are chaff. None of these
Oh,
books will end up in new heavens and new earth.
chaff in the wind.
They're chaff in the wind, and they ought to be treated that way. And in a certain sense, there needs to be a healthy dose of skepticism towards their claims and postures of knowledge. I don't think they have them. I think they end up in circles. I think and they certainly don't lead to righteousness. Or, to put it simply, when I look at myself in the mirror, I can say to myself, I'm a good person. If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
read Shaw and you read
Yeah, read
Marx
the
and
Psalms.
these guys, you're going to find your own criminality in the law that they put up. So when Paul states, and I think in Romans 3, that from the knowledge of the law it begets the knowledge of sin, they set up their own law, they beget their own knowledge of sin. And the path of that philosophy is death. It's the righteous and the wicked, and the righteous and the wicked are parallel to what life and death. These philosophers and these thinkers, they cannot escape from death. They will end in death. But yeah, but they will also end in judgment. That's something else that Psalm 1 ends with, is
Actually, it began. Well, some of the issues that you're talking, which we'll get into, we'll analyze that
Yeah.
in what we have of the text. But a great work is E.D. Hirsch. This is validity and interpretation. And here he's actually going against the grain a little bit. He does mention Ferdinand de Saussure, which here's the guy that really did launched 1,000 ships. This little
Well, one of the ships he
structuralism, anti-structuralism,
well, one of the
post-structuralism.
well, one of those ships he sailed was one of the books you mentioned before is Derrida as well. A
Oh,
lot of
definitely.
Derrida
Yes. Yeah.
is
Yeah,
doing
definitely.
is based on what he's read from Saussure.
But what's interesting here with Hirsch, he mentions, because you mentioned philosophers, so he mentions, of course, Saussure, and then he mentions Dilthey, Edmund Husserl, John Maynard Keynes. People don't think of him as a philosopher, but he was. Karl Popper, and Friedrich Schleiermacher. In other words, these guys have a tremendous influence. We don't think that they do, but they do. So what we're beginning to see here is when you delve into language, you have to have a philosophy of language. It's not just reading data. The question, Jacob, that you often ask is, what is reading? What is reading? I'm looking at a bunch of chicken scratch on a page. I don't know what is ordering the structure of lines and black ink marks that are on a written rice paper. I don't, what, how is going from this, there's space right here
Translate into
going into my
normative
mind, and then I'm coming back out and I'm telling, oh yeah, there's what this
But
guy.
ultimately, it translates into normative action. It translates
It has
into
to. There's
it
ethics.
translates
There's
into
morals involved in reading. There's ethics involved in reading.
that's the amazing
There's
thing.
right reading. There's wrong reading.
Yeah.
Derrida, he gets into that. See, he say what you want about Derrida, but I wish more Christians would read the most basic things of him, because he's asking questions that Christians don't ask. And I believe we have an answer for it. But if you don't have an answer for it, you are left out in this,
I think within the context of academia, if you're someone that feels called to that and feels called to scholarship, and you're wanting to be involved in that debate and that discussion, and then I think that would be necessary to read, just so that you would be in. But also that there are I mean, Augustine has a whole book on language that is very fascinating, and Aquinas has, I mean, there's plenty of Christian thinkers that can go toe to toe with Derrida, and there's plenty of Christian commentators on Derrida. It's just that you just got to find them, and
they're out there. They're out there,
and not be too daunted. They're intimidated just because they're thick.
because it's affecting. It is affecting.
But it is definitely
affecting the church. This is the stuff that's coming into the church. So when we go into, for example, LGBTQ or queer theory or any theory, feminist theory, whatever, it makes no difference. Where are they getting that? Where is this coming in? It's coming through the sophistication of this stuff. It's quite sophisticated. It's very involved. And it makes you think too. What about this? Well, what about this meaning? Well, maybe it means this. Maybe there's multiple meanings. And you know what? There are. That's the problem. And listen, when I come to the church, should we sing the Psalms exclusively or not? Well, there's the debate about that. Why? Well, there's a debate about Jesus's words. There's a debate about the book of Revelation. There's a debate about baptism. The church is involved in debate. Well, what does that mean? Meaning, what does baptism mean? When do we apply it, and how? Those are gigantic semantic textual questions, because we're reading a text.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what baptism is, wouldn't I? I don't. The world doesn't walk around arguing about baptism. That's just not. They're trying to improve their disc golf game. They're not.
Mhm,
They don't care about baptism.
mhm,
But Christians, man, you mentioned baptism. I'm going to Acts chapter 3, verse 21.
mhm.
So anyway, here's another one, and we'll stop with this. Frankenberry and Penner. This is actually good, but in the back it says arguing for a new method and theory for understanding religious belief, language, truth, and religious belief. This is a rather recent book. You gave me this one, I think.
I have so many books I don't remember.
I know that's the thing. But here's the list of bibliography. So this is recent. This is 2000s.
Mhm,
Alfred J. Ayer. Oh, there he is. Um, let's see. Klemke, who he shows up quite a bit. Hans Penner, Richard Rorty, of course.
mhm.
Paul Tillich, who still occasionally shows up, and then who we haven't mentioned yet is Ludwig Wittgenstein, who
Oh, wow.
he's going to show up everywhere
Yeah.
in Diridahl and all. So Wittgenstein, Gordon Clark again does 2 chapters, I think, in his language and theology, where Clark was one of the earlier writers dealing with this in his book Language and Theology. He kind of, because he's in the secular institutions like Butler University, so he saw this coming. He kind of anticipated it. So I would
Mhm.
recommend his Language and Theology. This little book, Rhetoric, by Renato Barilli. Now this one was your book.
I think so.
Yeah. And this one again is just critiquing what it is. They all start off a lot the same way, the sophists. So it's getting into the quasi-logical aspects of Aristotle's rhetoric. And Aristotle, of course, wrote a whole thing on rhetoric. That's why we're having these discussions. This goes back to the Greeks. You start reading the Greeks, you're like, oh, they were asked Plato in the dialogues.
I guess to like
Plato's doing
summarize,
the same thing in the dialogues.
I
What do you
guess
mean by
to
that? What does it mean this or does it mean that? But what if it means that? He's taking language and he's going at it through every possible conduit he can.
to sort of summarize it, as much in the same way that a lot of 20th century philosophers were dealing with language on a very fundamental level and um, kind of ascertaining what it means to have a language and to use a language and all that. So too the Christian, in a certain way, when he meditates day and night on the scriptures, he, in a sense, is involved in the question of language generally, and is involved in really, I mean, the Christian that meditates on God's word every day and is involved in that is in certain ways knowledgeable of what reading and writing and what language really can do. And I think that that's something when we get to Psalm 1, we could easily kind of see the problems of that because we're dealing with translations, we're dealing with different languages, different, maybe even grammatical structures and different tenses and stuff like that. And I think the overall thing that that does is it really humbles you. It doesn't, it makes you, it makes you stop and
Oh,
think
that's good. Yeah. Stop and think.
before before you get into Psalm 1. And
Yeah.
like like a lot of the Psalms, there's a lot of parallelism. You think, well, is it just saying the same thing over and over again? Well, keep rereading it, going over it again and again and again and again. In your mind, you sort of got a map of the psalm in your head. And even when you're not physically opening a book and craning your neck over it, you're going through it again in your mind and running those words in your mind, and you're doing what the psalm is saying. You meditate on God's word day and night, and that's one of the fruits. And there is a profit to this reading, and there should be an idea of profit in reading in which you obtain wisdom. that should be the reason why you're reading. And you shouldn't be reading to read. Even these like secular guys, I mean, they're not necessary for your life to read these guys, but
No, no.
in all reading, you have to profit from it. Otherwise, otherwise you're bookish. And I don't,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of books, so I really worry about that. I worry about being very bookish. That's my biggest worry. I don't want to be, going
Well,
up to God in
I think the
judgment
first
day
psalm
and
gets into
God
that.
telling me I'm very bookish. I would hate that.
No, you're not. That's good. You inherit it from. We like books, and the last couple. You brought it up a little bit. You got to deal with these guys, the ancient Near Eastern. So you've got a
Yeah.
lot of the Sumerian, Babylonian. Um, so this James Pritchard's work is like the Bible of the ancient Near Eastern texts and translations. So here you're dealing with ancient hymns, ancient psalms, ancient um, literature. And that's just a smattering of. I didn't want to spend the first 30 minutes just as an introduction to this, and then we never have to do this again.
Yeah.
Again,
Hopefully we don't.
this I've got like 30, 40 other works in the hermeneutic tradition, which is the great book, and of course, discourse analysis. You can go through this stuff, and a lot of it is very helpful. So if you read again, someone like a Stanley Grenz or somebody, there are some Christians out there, and of course, if you go to seminary or anything, that's going to break down, or university, you're doing divinity studies, any of that kind of stuff. That's where that's going to be. Do you find this in the church? Yes. No, you won't. You're not going to find anyone reading this in the pews, but you might have a pastor or somebody who's bringing the stuff down from the ivory
Yeah.
that gradually starts filtering into the church. Yes, definitely. It's where it's coming from.
Even the word like kind of our modern, you mentioned William James, kind of our modern notions of habit come from
Yeah.
his principles of psychology. And and you hear it does trickle down. People then start to it does trickle down. You
You
don't think it's
notice in the news, because our politics are so sharp,
Mhm.
are you hearing in the news now the word narrative?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
I started hearing that about 4 or 5 years ago. And then now all the media outlets, well, that's just your narrative. Oh, that's Derrida.
Well,
That's
leotard.
Rick Hour. That's where you're getting those leotard. Yeah, that's just your narrative. What
Mhm.
do you mean by that? I thought there was one truth, one narrative. Well,
Competition, you know.
we
Or
both
even
can't
like
we can't both be right.
I guess I'll do one more of
All right.
I think within conservatism, um, there's pockets in terms of like um, defining masculinities and defining femininities and stuff like that. That really is Darwinian. Um,
Yeah, do you ever hear
it's
about David?
really
Do you ever hear David talking about masculinity and femininity?
well. I think, but the way in which it's the sort of seeing dating as a market, I see it all the time in like social media. That really is going back to like what social biologists were talking about in the 70s, um, trying to like create something that wasn't the failures of social Darwinism with like Herbert Spencer, and then kind of with like Edmund Wilson and others that were sort of pushing that in the 70s. You just start seeing all these Darwinian things,
Oh yeah.
Darwinian concepts start popping up everywhere, and it's now in conservative discourse, and it's
Well, one of the
it,
things against
yeah.
homeschooling
But
is that
the
you
thing
need
is,
social. Well, what about your child's social interaction? He's got to have
yeah,
social interaction.
there is though like this issue I think within the church of like, well, aren't we over intellectualizing things already? I mean, we're discussing these books, and
And
how is I mean the average and practically the study of these other people is, you know,
well, maybe
first,
someone
I
will
mean, first,
answer
it
that.
isn't necessary for my salvation to know anything about Derrida. It certainly is. I certainly don't need to know him. Um, but
Right.
then on the other
Right.
hand, we as a culture or at least within the American evangelical context, are wondering why we're and now you're hearing post-Christianity and stuff like that. And it's to those men and women, maybe women, maybe, I mean, men and women generally, who who are called within the academic life, or are called into scholarship, or are called into study. And
This is
this
our
is
culture.
this is what, if you're that person that has that calling, then this is what
Yeah.
is the culture you're going up against. And
I look at my friends and people that have a calling, like you
and
said, bookish, but this, as you know
yeah,
me, this is very easy. This comes very
yeah,
natural. So just reading and collecting books was
yeah.
just, and someone suggested, hey, you should go to school for that.
That's basically
Or
where
hey,
I'm
you
at
like to
in life.
read, you should go to school
That's
for
where
that and
I'm
get some
at in
letters.
life.
I'm like, oh, okay.
That's where I'm at life. I just, it's like I need to get a degree or something. I need to justify this.
You're a professional student.
Now I'm a
You
professional
become a
student.
career student.
Yeah,
So now that we've got that out of the way, we don't have to deal with that. And it may come up here that this, that, and the other. We certainly don't want to be, but we haven't even addressed the issues. And we're not going to. We will as we go along. But the issues of inerrancy, the issues of infallibility, the issues of inspiration, the issues that the Holy Spirit inspired this particular. Now we've got transmission, however, because this text is 2600, 2700. If David wrote it 2900, it's 2800 years old. It's very old. It's very ancient. How do I know? Here's the empirical. How do I know? How can I verify that this text, here's Bart Ehrman, that this text was accurately. You'd have to have now I've got to invoke the Holy Spirit who superintends over ants and deer and gazelle. If he listens to Job, surely the Holy Spirit can so manipulate the actions of people that he can cause what we call the doctrine of preservation of the text. We'll get into those types of things. But let's go ahead and just jump in as we brought up this and many other issues that can be and will be brought up, certainly,
right.
as we go along in this study. But I wanted to lay that out as the introduction, so that we don't have to keep going back to that, but B, if we do, we can always say, see the first introduction. See episode 1, Psalm 1. So here's Psalm 1. And with this psalm, we'll read through it quickly. This is my old program, and for some of you will think that this is rather old and outdated with the new Logos software and all the rest of it. I don't care. This is just what I've used. I'm pretty at home with it. So I read Hebrew, Greek, so it's all good.
I thought, well, doesn't it have the Septuagint and,
Oh
or no,
yeah, I've got all that
I
down
gotta go
here.
scroll
Yeah,
down. Huh?
I've got all that down here.
Just gotta scroll down.
Then there's modern Greek, so I use all that kind of stuff. So when we look at the translations, first we'll just read, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. And he shall be like a tree which is planted by streams of water that yields its fruit. And I'm reading the ESV. In its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not, so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment. Caught that translation there. That's very good. In the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the ways of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. And that's the end of that. That's a quick psalm. It just everyone recognizes, critic and believer alike recognizes that this is obviously an introductory psalm. It's introducing the entire work of what has come to us as the 150 psalms, and this is a summation, a beginning of what the Psalms are. Blessed is the man, happy is the man. You see that there says they're happy or blessed. It's not the typical Greek word like Aristotle meant for happy. It'd be the word blessed, which is just ashar here. And here it's in construct. So starts off with ashrei ha'ish, blessed is the man. The man is blessed. Blessed is the man who does not halach, who does not walk in the counsel. And here you have the word the wicked. Okay. Rasha, the wicked. So right off the bat, I got to ask, what is the counsel of the wicked? Well, you know,
Yeah, it is.
and how do I know the counsel of the wicked so that I'm not deceived?
They don't refer to God.
I got to read. I got to read.
Yeah.
I have to read.
Well, yeah, you got to read, but when you do read, they don't
Right.
reference Yahweh. They don't reference the God of Scripture,
Pretty
particularly.
simple. So this psalmist is starting off immediately condemning what is referred to here as the advice or the counsel of the wicked. And here you see the various translations that are given advice, counsel.
But it's also like political, like a council, like you have
Instruction, guidance,
like an advisor to a king or the advisors or something like that.
information contained in a book written by a wicked person.
Mm.
I'm not, so I read Nietzsche or Karl Marx.
Yeah.
Well, that's the counsel of the wicked right there.
Yeah.
And how do I know that? Well, I read him. And so when I hear it coming into the church, I'm like, oh, hey, that's the counsel of the wicked. That's not Yahweh. That's not God.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're just being mean. Don't you know that we can't interpret? That's just your interpretation. And what that does immediately to me is weaken anything that I have to say about what I believe is the word of God. It's weakened at that point because after all, it's just your interpretation. You hear this all the time.
I mean,
It's a problem.
I would like to like in the church that I'm at, it's very solid and very the pastors there, I couldn't praise them more. But and you don't think that that's a problem when you're in these circles, because it's everybody's on the same page.
Right,
But
right,
I
right.
remember I was
You can be sheltered.
I was at the park and I was talking to a person that was very involved in one of the Methodist churches and was a seminary professor, and he referenced to me that Paul was sort of the inventor of the Christian religion and had doubts as to whether or not resurrection happened. He also was stating things like like he was an empiricist, and these are all these words that are coming from outside that have now they're in this church, and it's like, huh,
Right.
it does it happens. I wasn't paying attention. Um, and the man was very nice, very gentle,
Oh, sure.
very sweet, but those are
This is very
serious.
common today.
It's very common too.
And the whole
And within the church, I mean, that's something that your eyes and ears and have to be open to that type of talk. Uh, and it matters, kind of, I think within our context, it's more involved with books, exactly what you're reading, that, kind of making those distinctions that the Bible clearly makes. But even if you're not so much into books, you could be like
just culture in general. You're watching TV, you're
someone
listening
that's
to the
hanging with
news,
the wrong crowd. You're hanging with the wrong crowd, and you're hanging
you're
with the
listening to Twyla Paris or something, whatever.
yeah,
A
yeah,
commercial jingle, a commercial's selling you something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
whatever it is.
It's
Why did you
ubiquitous.
go to
I mean,
McDonald's?
the problem of distinguishing who who is in which group is a problem that must hit the Christian. I mean, it must hit the Christian.
It has to.
If you're not troubled by that problem, then I think you need to read this psalm, because it should be pretty apparent that your eyes and ears should be noticing these things. I think, and it's hard and difficult because a lot of the things that I value, I valued, um, are they trouble my heart because I have to really consider them. And that's the law that's revealing my sin in that sense. But that's where the law is really, although it curses you in the sense, it educates you. And
We can get into these things because you're raising up all of these. I can hear in your heart you're raising up a lot of these issues, because
mhm,
there is a clear distinction, at least according to this author,
mhm,
that there is a counsel of the criminal, a counsel of the wicked. This is a person that is not someone that you're thinking, yeah, he makes some, yeah, he's done so. This is somebody who is we're going to see this too. Who is the wicked? It's not just anyone that, it's anyone that doesn't believe in God. It's anyone that doesn't go to your denomination. It's no, don't. It is the wicked. It's with an article. It's the wicked. It's a very specific.
it's interesting.
Yeah, very specific. And then he's note the actions, walking. This idea of walking, where he's in the way or he's in the seat of the scorners. So here's your parallelisms
Mhm,
on here. You're the wicked, the sinners, the scorners. So now you can begin to see that these are anti people for whatever the author of the Psalms is talking about, because he contrasts it with the law of God. So the wicked, the scorner, the sinners, they don't like the law of God. They're pretty explicit about it. They think it's stupid, and
mhm,
anybody following God's law is an idiot. That's, in other words, this is not somebody who's, what does Moses mean? Let's talk about what Moses. Well, I disagree. I think Moses meant this. Well, I think Moses meant this. He's not talking about those two people. They're trying to figure out what Moses said.
right.
They're talking about people that there was no Moses. I can't believe you guys believe that Moses existed. You guys are idiots. It's that.
Mhm,
That is the wicked.
yeah.
That's someone that's directly attacking. I would think, or Antichrist. You want to use
And
that
then
Antichrist?
I wonder because I've read in a couple commentaries, and specifically Calvin, um, writes
That was good here.
that in each of these kind of, well, walk, stands, and sit comes from Deuteronomy 6, or I know Moses uses that somewhere.
Hear,
I
O
can't.
Israel, the Lord your God. You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul. Keep these words. Keep this text that I'm
Mhm,
commanding you today in your heart. Keep a text in your heart. See that? Keep this written text
mhm,
in your heart. Recite them to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're away, when you lie down, when you rise. Bind the texts, bind them as a sign on your hand. Fix them as an emblem on your forehead. Write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. In other words, put this text everywhere. Talk about the text when you're sitting. Talk about the text when you're walking. Talk about the text when you're lying down. Talk about the text when you get up. Talk about the text all the time. That's Deuteronomy 6. And it's definitely where the psalmists are stating this, because you can see here, in contrast, his delight, the man that is blessed who doesn't walk in the counsel of the wicked, his delight, rather, is in the law of the Lord. And that's that's his delight. It's in the Torah, the instruction, the counsel, the advice, the wisdom, the knowledge of the text that we have written down and given to us. And what does delighting look like? I meditate in it day and night. I think about it day and night.
Oh, I mean, it puts a smile on your face.
All the time. I'm thinking about it all the time.
I mean,
I'm brainwashed.
To put it. Yeah.
I want the Lord to brainwash me. I want to become an automaton. I want to be an automaton for Jehovah. I want the Holy Spirit to make me into, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. You are correct, Lord. I am wrong, and you are right, Lord. Yes, Lord. Absolutely, Lord. I don't know what I was thinking, Lord. Thank you for correcting me. Your word has corrected me. Thank you. I don't know what I was thinking. I was wrong. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I was. I would love to be that.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention Calvin back in verse 1, and I was wondering if you might agree with this, because in the commentary, he says it's left up to whoever reads it. This is sort of his contribution, but he says, the sum of the whole is that the servants of God must endeavor utterly to abhor the life of ungodly men, but as it is the policy of Satan to insinuate his deceits in a very crafty way, the prophet, in order that none may be insensibly deceived, shows how by little and little men are ordinarily induced to turn aside from the right path. They do not at the first step advance so far as a proud contempt of God, but having once begun to give ear to evil counsel, Satan leads them step by step farther astray till they rush headlong into open transgression. So, like,
that sounds so Calvin.
I know. And but the idea like that and I don't know if I don't know if he leaves it up to you to whether or not that there's sort of this declining slope from walking into the council to then standing like them to then sitting with this scoffers.
Yes,
Now
yes, yes, that's good. Yeah.
Like or it's like Jekyll and Hyde, where he takes a drink and then he takes another drink and then he stops taking a drink.
You first hear the counsel, then you begin to stand in the way. You're easing in a little bit more, listening. Yeah. And then you start scorning it. You're right. That is a stupid law.
Yeah.
There's a progression there. That's good.
Yeah.
So, and that's Hebrew. You pay attention to these movements of the body, walking, and then you're standing. Notice that Paul in Ephesians, he says, walk, stand. He uses these terms.
Run.
Run. Yeah. So here's the walking, and then now you're standing. And now the most comfortable position of all, I'm sitting. I'm sitting in the seat and I'm scoffing at the law of God. I'm scoffing at it. I'm making fun of it. I'm ridiculing it. It's irrelevant. Nobody knows who cares. And how can you tell whether or not God said this or not? How do you, what God? There's a lot of gods. I mean, come on, please. Well, this reference,
and these things they have different, like, it doesn't matter what status you are in society, whether you're like the president of the United States or the head of NATO, you receive counsel that way, or whether you're in your own little kind of small family, you receive counsel. That's something that this psalm doesn't. It isn't. I mean, it uses the language of like the advisors and kings and stuff like that, but everybody receives advice on how to do anything. I mean, this should be applicable to everyone, every Christian. And no one can escape this. If you're if you're serious about the Word of God and wanting and having faith in Jesus and wanting to live that holy life, you gotta watch what you're whose advice are you taking, you know? And that's a problem that's gonna come up in the Christian life. Certainly if you take it seriously. Um, so I don't know. That I just wanted to add um that it's
You know, you're right, where this affects the walking, standing, and sitting
mhm,
day and night. That's my life. That's what I do when I wake up in the morning and I go around driving my car, go to the supermarket. Everything is
on your
dictated
phone.
by the word of
You know,
God. What I'm
no,
watching,
whether I mean, with the phone,
time that I'm using.
I literally walk, stand, and sit with the phone. That's part of
Are you
our lives,
and what information are you, bringing into your mind? It,
and that's something that doesn't.
it's everything.
It's not just peculiar to Christians that are concerned or overly concerned about like what information am I taking in. I mean, it everybody has that problem, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're an atheist. Like an
Right.
atheist doesn't just sit here and is not concerned about what information society is taking or what information does the average citizen take. I mean, that's go live in the Soviet Union if you think that that's not a important thing. um this is
Well,
ubiquitous. Yeah,
so
this is a ubiquitous problem. Is
well, and
who
it's a constant. It's not something that you've arrived yesterday. That's great.
Mhm,
But yesterday's gone.
mhm.
This is today. What are you doing today? What are you doing right now? See,
Yeah,
that's yesterday's gone. Fantastic. You got baptized
yeah,
yesterday and became a church member.
yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Great.
Mhm.
Okay, good. What are you doing today?
Right.
You can't say, well, I'm baptized. Oh, yeah. Oh, all right. But
That's necessary
are you
in a
met are
certain
you meditating day and
degree.
night
Yeah.
today? It's today, not yesterday. Yesterday's gone. That's it's gone. It's out of here.
Yeah.
It's interesting here. I'm just noticing the Hebrew. This word here in the advice or in the council, etzah is in the advice or council. But then he contrasts it with he is like a tree, the person that doesn't do this. It says here, for he is like etzah. So he's like a tree, which sounds like the counsel etzah of the wicked. So the one that meditates in the law day and night is a tree. Now, a tree, that metaphor is used well in Genesis from the beginning. It's the tree.
That's a yeah,
Tree is
that's
gigantic. Everyone can identify with the strong tree, an immovable tree. Go try to move. Go
but
try and move a tree.
but this tree I don't think is a maple tree because maple trees don't grow.
Well, yeah, they wouldn't be
I
in
don't know that
Israel anyway.
maple trees may grow. I'm pretty sure that maple trees do not grow in Israel.
No, they don't.
But I think the image is more of a desert, and that the river is somewhat like an oasis. That
Streams
you
of
have
water
this
near
sort of a
running
desert.
waters.
You have this like sort of desert image, and that's the wicked. But the righteous, they're like in an oasis. It's like a palm tree. It's more of a I see a palm tree when I hear.
You could be
And palm trees have dates, and dates are very good. And Israel was known for its dates. Um, Even Herodotus talked about Israel's dates. They were well known, and the something like the palm tree was just it was very sacred. People really cared about the trees, and trees are everywhere in the Bible. It's fascinating. I've since I've been reading the Psalm, I've actually been kind of curious about all the different trees that are in scripture, like the fig tree and others, or cedars, and
been a few
what
books written about all the trees in
and
the
what like
Bible.
practically the 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 person in that region in that time, how would they kind of interact and use how would they use these trees? And they would use them in worship. They would use them in liturgy with the trees. I can't remember
These are
where
everything.
the palm trees, but they would use that for a specific feast.
Well, the
I
emblem of Israel is one of its emblems is a palm, a great
yeah,
palm tree. That's you see
because
that on coinage.
there's great wealth that is brought from
Very
that
hard
tree.
to move a palm tree.
Yeah.
And a palm tree can be in a desert in the middle of nowhere, and its roots finds water.
Is
That's
it,
what's
I
interesting
could be
here.
wrong, but is it, there's something in which the fawn, the leaf, oh, they're big leaves. I don't,
Yeah,
fawn. The fawns, they would be used in a certain, I think like the Feast of the Tabernacle or something like
yeah.
that.
For booths, the tavern
Yeah.
feast booths, they would go out and get the palm fronds and bring them over, and they'd cover themselves. And these things
Mhm.
would still continue to grow, which is representing uh, inhabiting a tree, or you're in a booth, so you're
Mhm.
surrounded and guarded. But this like a tree singular.
Mhm.
He's like a tree planted,
Mhm.
and then the streams of water here is plural. There's multiple streams. There's a lot of rich resources that are going on here. Now, streams of water, we're going to see that imagery of streams of water. Here you're getting into the of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So it's organic and it's alive. It's a living thing. Whereas the counsel of the wicked, or the advice or the scorn, that's the wicked is the source of their own scorn. The wicked is the source of their own counsel. But here a tree is receiving a source that is not, trees don't produce water.
Yeah.
You got to get this from another source.
Yeah.
And that's the image that's going on here. And so
And
you're getting the law of God is the source, and the Holy Spirit is the water that gives you. So now we're in it. So it's not about me reading text anymore. It's
mhm.
something else is at work operating within me.
Yeah. That
And
causes
that's
me
the
to,
difference.
I think, to do two things. One is to meditate on God's law.
That's the
And
key.
secondly, to renounce the sinner, to renounce the wicked, to recognize the wicked and to say no. That's, I think those are two things that may be considered like the cause of what are the causes of blessed life in a sense. It is God's word, and it is in affirming that as well. But I was curious how you wanted to take the law of the Lord, because
That's what I
I
was
think
just
some
looking
people,
at.
yeah, I think some people might think the
A very
Mosaic,
broad term.
but I think I've read from what I was reading was some said Torah. Some of the
The
commentators,
word is Torah. So what you
right?
see right here, for
Yeah.
example, ki im betorot. So that there is rather,
Mhm.
moreover, however you want to. Ki im is a bit tricky to translate, but this phrasing here is a preposition with the word Torah. But in law, or in instruction, what's interesting here is there's no article, so it's not the law. It's
Mhm.
just, but in instruction, and it's the instruction of the Lord. That is his delight and his pleasure. And again, no article here, no the. And in Torah, again, in his Torah, um, he meditates. And then, of course, day there and night. That's the phrase that you find in Genesis of day and night. So that's your whole day.
Well, I was wondering how to approach that, because I was curious about what the Talmud said something about something like this, and I found something, and I think this kind of gets us ideas to how we conceive the law of the Lord, and what it does to character. Um, I'll paraphrase, or I'll read parts of it. But it's found in the Talmud, and it says the rabbis taught, this is the order of interrogation when the poor, the rich, or a wrongdoer appears before the divine tribunal of judgment, which that goes down to 6. The poor person is asked, why did you not pursue the study of the Torah? If he should say, I was poor and was preoccupied with earning a livelihood, he is asked, were you poorer than Hillel? It was told of Hillel, the elder, that each day he worked and earned half a dinar. One half he gave to the guard at the academy, and the other half he spent for his own sustenance and that of his family. And then it goes on, when a rich man is asked, why did you not study the Torah? If he should answer that he was a rich man and busy with his business affairs, they ask him, were you then more wealthy than Rabbi Eliezer ben Harsam? It was told of him that his father left him an estate of 1,000 towns and 1,000 ships, but he himself used to put his pack on his back and go from city to city and from province to province to study the Torah. When a wrongdoer is asked, why did you not study the Torah? If he should reply that he was of handsome appearance and distracted by his sensual passions, he is asked, were you more distracted by your sensual passions than the righteous Joseph? It was reported that each day the wife of Potiphar tried to seduce the righteous Joseph with words. The clothes she wore from him in the morning she did not wear in the evening, and what she wore in the evening she did not wear in the morning. She said to him, yield to me, but his answer was no. She said to him, I will have you put in jail. And he replied, the Lord releases the imprisoned. That's Psalm 146. She said to him, I will put down your haughtiness. He replied, the Lord raises up those who are bowed down. That's Psalm 146 again. She said, I will blind your eyes. He replied, the Lord opens the eyes of the blind. Psalm 146.
Yeah.
So she offered him 1,000 talents of silver to yield to her, to lie with her, to be with her, but he refused to yield to her, to lie with her in this world, to be with her in the world to come. It thus turns out that Hillel condemns the poor, Rabbi Eliezer ben Harsam the rich, and Joseph the wrongdoers. Now, when they mean the Torah, what is it that they mean? Do they
I think,
mean
well, that's
specific?
what
Do they mean
Torah is, a
specifically
very
the Mosaic
broad word.
covenant?
It
Yeah.
means instruction, basically. And it's sometimes in Jewish literature, Torah refers to the 5 books, the Pentateuch, specifically to the laws of Moses, the law. And then sometimes it refers to the entire Hebrew scriptures, that the law, the prophets, and the writings, the Tanakh. That whole thing would refer to as the instruction of God. All of it is the instruction of God. So you'd read all of it. So I think here it's a very broad term of that entire life, living streams of living water. And it says it brings forth its fruit. It does not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. That's the blessings of the Torah. You have blessings and cursings. So in Deuteronomy, if you will obey the Lord and do all that he commands, the Lord will set you high above. He will bless you. He will bless your basket. He will bless the fruit of your livestock, the fruit of your cattle, the fruit of your womb. Here's fruit. You will abound and prosper in the fruit of your livestock, the fruit of the ground, the fruit of the land. The Lord will open you if you obey all the words of the Lord. So, of course, if a man is continually, constantly obeying the Torah of God and living and walking in that instruction 24/7, day and night, he will be blessed in all that he does. Here's an immediate problem, Job.
No, but he is blessed in all
Immediate
that he
problem
does. He is, in a sense,
is
because
that why is it then that no one lives 24/7, 360 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, blessed? No faults. 24 hours blessed.
I think
It opens that up.
I read in one commentary, I think it was the World Biblical Commentary, and I think, well, I guess what I'm trying to do in my mind is to make Torah, if Paul is grabbing from the Old Testament to make his argument for Jesus, and Jesus is someone, as Christians, when we'll get to Psalm 2, that's something you recognize.
Yeah, you go right
Well,
into
then
it.
Torah is, if we just mean that Torah is the first 5 books of Moses, or simply the law of Moses, I don't think that that's quite how to read that, because one question is, do you read these Psalms eschatologically, as having something of a future dimension? And if that's the case, do we consider Torah not just the 5 books of Moses, but also David's Psalms, that's Torah? Obviously, I would think so. And then the prophets. And if the prophets are foretelling Jesus, then do we extend that idea of Torah, that what Jesus is really saying is Torah? What
Yeah.
Paul is really saying is Torah. And that this psalm, although it speaks of the law of the Lord, doesn't talk about merely like the laws of Moses,
Right,
but
right.
generally God's instructions, which include God's laws that were given to Moses and the covenant that was made there, but more comprehensively, the narratives that are found in the 5 books of Moses, and the Psalms and the prophets, and even extending into Jesus Christ and his apostles. That whenever God instructs his people, that's Torah. And that this psalm, although it's in the Old Testament, this is absolutely applicable in 2024.
Oh, sure.
And it's kind of within the attitude of that Talmud section, um, which I don't know, I would agree with the whole thing, but the idea that you're without excuse, especially if you're a Christian inside a church, that
Well,
maybe I'm being more,
that's the
maybe
beauty of the Psalms, because
I
the
don't
more
know.
you read the
What do you think
scriptures,
that I said? Is that accurate? Or
I
I
think
mean,
it is accurate. I think what you're saying is accurate. When you read the Talmud, for example, you see how many different rabbit trails they can go off into. They can go off into all kinds of stuff. They're trying, because the word of God is a single unit, so you're applying it in 1,000 different directions, which is
Mhm.
what you're supposed to do. That's meditating in it. So meditating, you're thinking about, well, how does that apply to this? Well,
Mhm.
yeah, of course. There's
Yeah.
nothing, there's nothing in this text restricting you from doing that. That's where the science of hermeneutics, I think hermeneutics is an art. I don't think it's a science. I think it's an art. And you can get so restrictive. Well, what did it mean to the original author and the original author's intent, and what was I don't know. I don't even know who wrote the first song. It may have been David. I don't know. But I can read
Could
these
be.
words and interpret and understand the applications. These things are applying all over the place. I know what a tree is.
Mhm.
I know what the Torah is. I know what they're referring to. I know all of that, and that applies. I know wicked, the counsel of the wicked, the scoffers. That's not a that's a no-brainer. Um, these are very definite, set, definite kind of us and them. There's us, we
Mhm.
meditate in the word of God day and night, and then there's them. They don't. They
Yeah.
scoff at it.
Mhm.
That's a pretty broad playing field. That's big. My one point here is the perfection of this. He has been a tree planted by rivers of water that gives its fruit, and this is perfection right here. His leaves don't ever wither.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this guy, right, whoever this man is that's blessed, he never Like it's like I was saying, it's 24/7. This guy never goes bad. Has there ever anybody been, has anyone on the planet Earth ever been like this? Leaves have never withered. Everything he does prospers. God blesses everything that he does. Everything he does, that'd be fantastic. Christianity, I think everybody would be a Christian. If you believe in God and all of a sudden we're all millionaires. Everything's prospered. Health, we live to be, well,
Yeah.
we don't die. There's an interesting thing
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Because if you're planted by living streams of water, when are your leaves ever going to die? You're immortal.
Mm-hmm.
This is the tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
The law of God is the law of what is right and what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is evil, and what is good.
Yeah.
And it leads to immortal life. So yeah, we're into eschatology here.
Yeah. And Jesus
There's no way
himself,
around it.
Jesus himself, my pastor's going over the Sermon on the Mount. I'm glad he is, because I thought of it.
Which is very much
Often does
based in the Psalms.
Jesus, Jesus, there's two gates. There's a wide gate and a narrow gate. And
Yep.
how often does he say, I am the water in John 4, and I am the life. It's me. I'm the vine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
And
is Jesus. The Messiah is a tree planted by streams of water,
mhm.
and he yields his fruit in its season on time. His foliage
Appointed.
never fades,
Yep.
and whatever it produces thrives. Now you'll note the imagery at the end of Revelation of the tree of life that forever gives its fruit and its foliage and its leaves. Now, this is eternal. These words lead to eternal life. That's what it is saying. But here, now notice the next antithetical parallelism.
Mhm.
The wicked are not so. Well, what happens to them? Oh, they're blown away in the wind like chaff. The world is passing away, but the righteous, they live forever. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words are forever. You see this stuff going on. So the chaffer, the wind, here's another spirit reference of the spirit. I bet you that word. Let me just see this. I bet you. Maybe. No. Okay, it's not that. So I was just seeing if it was ruach or wind, but it's not.
What is it?
The wind drives away. That says, but ki'im. That's using that phrasing again. But
Mhm.
the chaff, which here is driven about. Oh, it is ruach. Look, yes, ruach.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, it's ruach, the spirit. You translate
Mhm.
that spirit sometimes, but that imagery. Some commentators, Hebrew, that is, even though we would translate it wind, the spirit is always connected with this. So
Mhm.
Jesus says, Nicodemus, you must be born again. Don't you know this? The wind blows wherever it blows. So is the spirit. So there's always a close connection between wind and spirit. And here you have the ruach blowing away, but the streams of water, which again is associated with the spirit, all of these images. So now we sound very much like Jewish Talmud, where they comment on all this stuff and all of these images that come out. And we've spent an hour and a half talking, and we're not even into this thing. And
We need to get into
it
this.
goes
I
on
didn't
and on
realize
and
that
on. This is just the first song.
yeah. We need to wrap the
Because you start looking at it, you start thinking, man, what is that wind like chaff? Okay, so the wicked are not so. Well, what happens to the wicked? They perish, they die. Yeah, but the righteous die too. Eventually I die. You know, these are therefore the wicked. Is there more? The wicked, the ungodly, the wicked will not, and there's the word again, stand. Well, they stand, see, in the counsel of the wicked, that's where they stand right now in this life. We don't stand in that right now in this life. And in the judgment, they will not stand. Whereas you will. Because the righteous stand in the law of God. They walk in the law of God. They lie down in the law of God. Many have commented on the fact that the judgment here, and you can see there as it breaks it down, bamishpat. So mishpat is judgment. Ba is the preposition, so bamishpat. That is the definite article, but in the judgment. What? Now, I don't have enough information here, but what is he talking in the judgment? The wicked will not stand. Now, what's interesting here is the word klum. And this is the word that's often translated as rise. Or the word for Jesus when he says Talitha kum. He's raising from the dead. He says, little girl, arise. And he uses this word. And we'll note that the Septuagint here uses this word, anistemi, which means to cause to arise. And it's often used for resurrection. Are you telling me that this psalm is already stating, giving the contrasts? And here you can see the translation here, the Young's literal translation, the wicked rise not in judgment. Is that eschatological? If I have the freedom of Jewish interpretation, looks like it to me.
Yeah.
Certainly looks like it to me that it is. And what's this assembly of the, what is this? That's this assembly of the righteous, the council or purpose of the righteous, or the assembly or the company of the righteous. What is all this stuff? And here's that word, tzaddik. That's the word righteousness that you see so much in Paul talking about righteousness. That's the word right there. Well, already we're in this. We're in the witness. We're in the congregation or the assembly of the righteous. Oh, well, what's the assembly of the righteous? Who are they? Those are people that meditate day and night in the law of God. They're like streams of living water. That's who those people are.
Yeah, the people that go to church.
People that assemble together.
Yeah.
Sinners, they assemble together too. They go to, rock concerts and whatever else that they go to and do
What were we just talking about? It was
do their thing.
Swamp Fest. You were showing me that.
Yeah, Swamp Fest. They go to Swamp Fest. So the wicked rise not in the judgment, nor sinners in the company of the righteous. And then you get, and this sounds strangely like Revelation, for the Lord knows the way of the righteous. That's what it's all based on. It's not what you know, it's what God knows about you. It's what God knows about what you know. So Paul says, beloved, that I know God, and then he says, rather that I am known of God. He backs up, rather that I am known of God. But the way of the ungodly shall perish. Now, before we leave this psalm, how is it that we are to interpret the world and the wicked who prosper? And it seems like the wicked have the upper hand, and that the wicked prospers, and that they have long life, and that they tend to live, and they're not perishing, but the righteous, they seem to be perishing all over the place. They can't even get, I can't even get 25 people to come to church at a particular type of thing. You know what? Church, you hear about the church is declining. Nobody's going to church anymore. But you go to a football game and there's 50,000 people roaring. You go to a Twyla Paris concert, there's 25,000 youth roaring at the top of their lungs. And she's making billions and billions of dollars. And she's dishing out and singing the counsel of the wicked. It seems like either this psalm is full of it, or this life is not the end.
Mm-hmm.
So if the righteous suffer and perish because of their righteousness, they have immortality. They will live forever. Everything they do will prosper. That's a promise.
There's a
That's
there's
resurrection talk.
there's a commentary by I think his name is Rolf A. Jacobson that I was reading, and he made me notice that the righteous or the word righteous in the beginning is singular, and then at the end you then have that plural righteousness. I think that's right. Where you have the community at the end, or the way of the righteous.
He would be correct. The first
Yeah.
usage of righteous tzaddik is singular, and then this one here is tzaddikim, and you'll notice that little ending there, im. That's the plural.
Yeah.
That's put
So
on
you have
a
like
noun.
you have a singular. I guess it was
yes,
also
that's right.
there is sort of messianic themes in which you have a singular righteous person that is like and then you have finally the community. But he also mentioned this difference in the grammar where let me see if it's in mine. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous. So the Lord is the subject of the sentence,
Yes.
and the way of the righteous is the object.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
way of the ungodly shall perish. It's almost as if
Well, there's
I
two
guess
ways here.
the two ways.
Yeah. And they're
But
both the
I
same
guess
word
what
here.
he
So
was
the way of the righteous, and then there's the way of who we met in the beginning, the Rasha. He's the guy that we met in verse 1. The way of the wicked will perish, and abad is destruction, be destroyed.
But he was also noticing I don't know if I agree with him too much, but it was interesting because he was showing with even the grammar that the way of the righteous is the one in which self-will is kind of leaned over to God's will, and
Well,
God
you're
is
meditating in the instruction of God and you're following it.
yeah.
Yes.
And then with the wicked, they're alone.
That's actually a good point. So you would ask the way, what is the way of the righteous? Well, if you derech here, the word. So if we go back up to verse 1, blessed who does not walk in the counsel, stands in the way of sinners, and we'll see if that's the same. The same. So there's walk in the counsel of there's the word that we encounter at the end. So here's a good inclusio. You see the same guy in verse 1, and at the end you see the same guy here again. So Rasha, that's what we would call an inclusio. So deliberate. That tells me about this text, aside from its meaning. That tells me that its structure is very deliberate. Whoever is writing this, they are structuring. There once was a man from Nantucket. Once upon a time, there was a guy, very structured. Everyone's gonna know this, and when they see it, they're gonna be go, "Oh, okay, yeah, I know what this is." So that greatly helps us in interpretation or hermeneutics. But anyway, yeah, there it is. Derek, same word. So the first sentence starts off with the Derek, or the way of the sinner, or the criminal, the unrighteous, and the last verse, the way of there it is again, will perish. So why don't you want to stand in the way of the sinner or the way of the criminal? because you're going to perish down that way. That way leads to perishing. This way over here, though, the Torah of God, this way leads to immortality. And in the judgment, that's going to be settled. I could easily get that out of this psalm. And we're not quoting anything out of the New Testament or anything. I could literally read that.
Yeah.
That there's
Okay.
going to be a future judgment that's going to distinguish between those who walk the way of the criminal and those who walk the way of those who meditate on the law of God. And the judgment, the Lord who knows
Mhm.
the righteous congregations. He knows. Well, how's that going to be manifested? The judgment will make it known.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like Paul.
Well, it sounds like in the beginning of Revelations where Jesus is going
Sounds like the
down.
beginning, right? I know your ways. I know your deeds.
Mm.
Yeah.
No.
So, oh, wait a minute. God knows what I do? Does he know what I'm meditating on? Does he know my thoughts? Are those going to be judged? Am I going to be judged?
Mhm.
Am I going to stand in the judgment? Or to use the Hebrew kum, am I going to rise in the judgment and face God who knows my works, my thoughts, my deeds, my words?
Because the thing that
How am I going to get out of
the,
that?
the
Because I'm a
thing that
sinner.
it's almost as if you can't approach
I'm
the
a sinner.
assembly of the righteous if you have sin. Sin is something that blocks you from worship. And
Not
if
to
we're
mention that I'm
speaking,
going to die.
yeah, and if we're speaking, if we're
I'm
speaking
messed up.
about in verse 3 with this simile of the tree, and something that it's bizarre of a tree that leaves never wither and a fruit that always bears fruit in its season. No droughts, no nothing, no. It's
Perfect.
the same bountiful yield every
Perfection.
single time. That's pretty strange. But
Perfection.
but you know, when we go to church,
Not to mention that.
yeah.
How do you get this righteousness?
Yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to drive at is that, you know, we don't go to worship to become the fullest sense of ourselves or the fullest expression of who we are. There's something that can block you from worship. And that has to be answered, that has to be dealt with. If you do have sin, you can't, and to be in the assembly of the righteous and to understand that not just not just that I'm a good person, but I think maybe the right word is eschatologically, with a sense of eternity, with a sense of where history will go to. Um, it really is something special. And then the other thing I think that this psalm absolutely dispels is any notion that we as Christians can somehow live a Christian life apart from God's words, that we are to seek out other experiences.
Yeah.
I was reading this. I don't know. I pick up these.
It's his instruction. It's
Yeah.
his Torah. It's the streams of water are not mine. I'm not producing streams of water. That's
Oh
nourishing
yeah.
me. I'm pretty passive here. I'm receiving the instruction and I'm doing them, but I'm doing them as I'm enabled because I'm being the streams of water or what keeping me is what. So it's somebody that God knows and he's orchestrated. You know, he's got you on the top, the bottom, around, and everything else.
I think
He's got you. But the
I
wicked,
think a,
ah,
I think a theme in Calvin's work um is deception and knowledge. And I was reading this work. It was a diary of this. There was a saint that got, like a Catholic saint that got canonized in 2000. Her name is Saint Maria Faustina Kowalska. And in the 30s, she's having conversations and visions with Jesus.
No,
And you wonder, like, I read the back of it, and I'm like, well, as a Christian, I think I ought to really um, look into this. I would hope that, I mean, it would be amazing if Jesus were talking to this woman.
there's
If
all
she, if
sorts of
that is,
mystics. Yeah,
then the whole, then we need to like add this woman to the canon and
yeah,
stuff. But
some do.
and the Catholic Church did to a certain degree.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
but
Well, if you're talking to Jesus, yeah,
but but
I'd like to
but
have that
but
recorded and read it.
if you know, one of the things that was stated, at least these conversations between Jesus and Saint Maria Faustina Kowalska. Okay,
I'll
that's
speak,
a
yeah.
mouthful.
I think I've heard.
Is that it was this conversation in which she will not be judged on the final day, and she has escaped that. And I'm like, well, that's not God's will. That's
And
not
that's
God's will.
and that's how you know.
And and with Calvin, especially, even in the beginning of his institutes, you deal with knowledge and how do I know? And deception is at the heart of it.
You know,
How as a Christian can I not be deceived? And the only answer that we can have is God's written word. That's how, not anything else. If I seek, and I have, I was diagnosed with bipolar one and mania and stuff like that. I know I kind of can feel what this specific Catholic saint felt when you're really in those religious experiences.
you know,
But you can't rely on that.
no.
You got to rely on God's word. That's the bedrock of everything. And Psalm 1, if you extend Torah,
Psalm 1 says that.
if you extend the idea of Torah to mean generally the teaching of God and his word, to move it, I know that colloquially it suggests the Pentateuch, but
It includes
it,
that. It's not limited to
it
that.
includes that, but it's broader in that it has
Sure,
a
sure.
broader meaning. And if that's true, then yeah,
And
yeah,
that's where I would stress that the article is not used. It's not the
Mhm.
Torah. So it's not being
Mhm.
used. It's just Torah. So in
Mhm.
Hebrew, there was no a Torah. So
Mhm.
the indefinite article, they didn't have that. So it
Right.
speaks more of the quality of instruction. So it's not any specific Torah like that law over there. It's just the instruction. And the word Torah means instruction. We uh again, this is backed up by most literature, but the word Torah, we translate that so often law, it means instruction. It's instruction. It's
Mhm.
not, this I it's the instruction, and you're meant to derive a lot out of it too. So it's what you can get out of it, what you can, like what we've been doing here. And this is
Mhm.
why you see so much in Jewish exegesis where they'll go in several different places. Well, they're free to do that. That's your it's better than murdering somebody. I'd rather be in a theological discussion with somebody who I disagree with than raping somebody,
That would be awful.
because that's what the wicked do. They're out doing, smoking meth and stuff. And I'm debating you about whether or not Leviticus 19 applies today. I would rather be in that setting of debating you whether or not Leviticus 18 applies today than out 2, 3 o'clock in the morning at a bar just getting completely inebriated.
Yeah.
And the Lord is more pleased with his people, that even though we're engaged and we're disagreeing,
Mhm.
but look at what we're talking about. We're talking about the Torah of God, the instruction of God, and we're wanting to apply it in our lives because there's prosperity and blessings to be had. And if you're out at 3 o'clock in the morning drinking, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not good.
No good.
It's not good.
No good. No
Not,
good.
not good advice. And I work in the jail. So yeah, not good advice. And 20 years ago, I had brush-ins with the law. So it's not, it leads to problems. It's been shown in my life. Yeah, that's a bad way to go. That does not work that way, because God knows your ways. And see, he steps in and says, hey, cut it out.
I think that's also another
Yeah.
recognition is that it is the Spirit that kind of,
Gotta have the Holy Spirit.
and then
Gotta have the Holy Spirit.
the other thing is that just when you
This
when
is
you're
what Paul means when he says the letter kills, that the Spirit gives life. We could sit here and read this psalm without the Spirit, and it's just a dead letter. It's just text.
no, yeah,
It means nothing. But if I have the Holy Spirit and faith in God, this text is now living. It's life. It's giving me
it's
living
giving me a
water.
guarantee.
I'm living.
It's giving me a guarantee.
Giving me a guarantee. I don't know everything that it says and all that. That's okay. He does. And so I'm not God. I don't have to know everything. Fantastic. Great. That sets me free. I don't have to know everything. So, but we're in the discussion, and it's warming to me as father and son.
Yeah.
More than that, that transcends our fleshly biological relationship, as important as that is, but that's secondary to the spirit being members joined together in one body relationship. That's the primary. That's more important than my flesh relationship to you. Because you could be a
Augustine,
sinner that scorns, like Samuel's sons, that scorns
yeah.
the law of God. Well, then you're not my son. I hate it, but you're not my son. These are
Mhm.
my sons. These are my sisters and my sons over here. They're the ones that are following the way of the Torah. That's Jesus teaches that. It's a very hard word.
I was going to mention Augustine because in somewhere in his Confessions, when he's speaking about his mother and his father, he really
Oh,
in
Augustine,
new,
yeah.
in New Heavens and New Earth,
Yeah.
they're equal as citizens. That distinction of mother and father kind of equal. There's an equanimity to
Yeah.
there's an equity between everybody. But the one relationship that is there is of Jesus and of the Father, who is, yeah, and Jesus is, it's it's interesting how when you think of things from the perspective of new heavens and new earth and resurrection, how many of our relationships get sort of restructured in that way, and the things that matter get revealed.
Yeah. That's all right. All right, we have to stop because this is just Psalm 1. Psalm 2
Oh,
is a doozy. It just right out of the gate, these just bing bang. It's like a double hit. And most
mhm.
people believe that Psalm 1 and 2 is meant to be read together as a unit. Seem to suggest that in the way it's structured and everything. And we'll get into that next week or next
You want to do it next week?
time or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I
because
could
we
do it
could do
next.
these, we should do them at least once a week.
Okay, I can't do it every day. I got.
Can't do it every day. There's no way.
Mm.
But
That doesn't mean that you don't meditate on God's law.
yeah,
We're just talking about the podcast.
yes,
That wasn't licensed to like only read the book once a week.
I read the
Let's get that
Bible
clear.
every day, morning, noon, and night,
Let's get that clear.
all the time. Always thinking about it. It's
Yeah.
all right. Well, that's the end of that, and
All
we'll see
right.
you next time. So
All right.
stop recording here.